Hey everybody, this is Izzy here coming to you with another review. Today's review is based off of one of my favorite animated films of all time, plus with it being one of my favorite toy lines. Today's review is off of Transformers, the movie that was released in 1986. If I'm not mistaken, it did receive a theatrical release at that point, but due to the fact that it didn't bring necessarily bring gangbusters at the box office, it wasn't a very long theatrical release. But at the time, see, me personally, I did not know that it received a theatrical release until much later on into my adulthood. I didn't first watch this until friends of mine who were living in Germany at the time, we were hanging out in their living room, and then they decided to turn this on. This film in particular was very different compared to the Transformers cartoons, even though they had the same characters in the theme song. The cartoons played it relatively safe, given the fact that obviously they were catering more to the children, and it wasn't so much anarchy, death, and I don't want to say suggestive dialogue, but at the same time, wasn't as heavy-handed on the emotional themes compared to this one specifically. This Transformers film is a lot darker, more menacing, emotional, and one thing that I grew to appreciate, especially much later on into my adulthood, is how the music cinematically propels the story into a much more different stratosphere. Transformers the movie is essentially basically what it is. It's almost as if you could look at it as if it's a two-part Transformers episode. Only in this case, it's a lot darker and has a lot more suggestive themes as far as the emotionality and the themes of loss that is being presented in this film. Basically, what it is, you had the Transformers and the Autobots and the Decepticons still continuing their ongoing battle, and in terms of you had the Decepticons who want to rule Cybertron and want to rule the world essentially. You have the Autobots who has attempted to continue thwarting the plans of the Decepticons. Unfortunately, in this case, you have the Decepticons who managed to successfully infiltrate and ambush the Transformers' base of operations, which result in one of the most epic animated battles of all time. And it's very interesting to see how a lot of your Japanese animation played when you watch the film now, especially, you see a lot of the influence of the Japanese animated culture that has played a huge monumental role, especially when you have the Transformers and Mechabots and things like that. So it's always been a relatively fond memory for me, especially when it comes to watching this film, because no matter how many times I watch it, I never get tired of it. And the Lion version, Lion is an 80s heavy metal band that was somewhat popular in the 80s, but it wasn't. They flew under the radar, and they did a very, very awesome version of the Transformers theme song. It's metallic, it's heavy, it's brutal, and even though the vocals aren't what you would consider brutal, it's the fact that it still pumps you up. And I always kind of held a little bit of resentment to the fact that the recent Transformers films didn't use the theme song that this one used, because no matter how many times I hear the theme song from this one, to me it never feels dated, and it still provides that same epic punch that literally just makes you want to ball up your fist and it's pumping in the air, because that's what a monumental and memorable theme song is supposed to do. It's supposed to not only pump you up, but just it maintains that certain sense of catchy sensibility and melodic nature that you simply cannot get out of your head. After the whole ambush and the infiltration of the Autobot base of operations, along with the epic battle that concluded with Optimus. And the thing about the film one thing that it actually did very successfully, especially because it was very controversial at the time, the fact that they literally killed off one of the most popular major characters of all time in the Transformers mythology. I don't want to get into spoilers, but obviously, anyone who has watched the film or is familiar with Transformers know exactly who I'm talking about. You had a lot of parents and kids at the time who were literally, figuratively traumatized by this death, because it was such a huge risk for Hasbro, if you will, to get to not only kill off this character, but do it in such a fashion that it scarred children. It scarred me in particular. I'm not gonna lie, but it was done so magnificently well that it just hit you within the emotional core. You had another monumental Transformer Decepticon that was ceremoniously killed off, if you will, and transform into, no pun intended, transforms into another antagonistic villain that is very much similar to how he's conceptually based, but either way, it still was very different at the time. You could get away with it now, but back in the 1986, where you just those two were very prominent within the Transformers mythology, it was very rare to see studios or a toy line go to such lengths to not only shock the audience, but to just go into a completely different direction. On top of that, it also introduces new antagonistic Decepticons and Galvatron. The Transformers animated film still to this very day packs a very monumental, epic, and emotional punch. And I've always felt, looking back on it now in hindsight, as much as I do enjoy some of the live action Transformers films, I did enjoy the first one. The second one is pretty decent. The third one is good. The fourth one is kind of where you begin to see the downward spiral of the series. And the fifth one, the less said about it, the better, in my opinion. But I just felt that, and Bumblebee was very good. Bumblebee was the one Transformers film that did it right as far as focusing on the robots. The animated films in general typically does a much better job at focusing on the robots and providing that sense of connectivity with the characters. And I do understand why they don't focus so much on the robots with the live action film, because of how expensive it is and how much special effects it requires to not only continue to make the robots look as realistic as possible, but to provide that character development that will allow the audience to connect with them in such a fashion to where you care about them. Whereas in the cartoon, obviously you care about them. However, in the live action film, I don't necessarily believe, in my perspective, that you care about them as much as you did with the cartoons and the animated film. The music in this animated feature really helps propel the story and sets the mood as well, whether it's something that involves loss, something that involves hope, or whether it involves something that's very war-torn, ravaged base of operations. It simply further adds to the fuel that is what separates it from a lot of the animated features that was prominent at that time as well. Transformers animated movie is still, like I said, it is one of my favorites. The voice acting is amazing. The animation style that was used for this particular feature, it really just still holds up to this very day. It's not dated. It just looks very complicated. It's smooth. It has a certain fluid moisic to it, and it just simply allows you to not only be completely immersed within the world of Cybertron and on Earth and other parts of the solar system. It just has a certain level of connectivity to it that you simply cannot find anywhere else, especially in much later on versions of your animated films, in my opinion. Another thing that I did love about this film is the fact that it does introduce new characters. At the same time, you still care about those new characters. You had Ultra Magnus, Hot Rod, RC, Galvatron, Unicron. Unicron is still one of my favorite Transformers antagonists of all time, and I'm still disheartened and disappointed at the fact that we never got to see him in the live action format. However, given Michael Bay's design of the Transformers, I guess as much as I do enjoy Michael Bay's work, I'm very glad that they didn't use Galvatron in the Michael Bay universe, because I can only imagine what kind of mess physically and creatively he would have looked on the big screen. So I'm quite thankful that this didn't happen. But the late great Orson Welles provides such a menacing voice to this conglomerate, megalomaniac god of a robot that just devours anything and everything in his path by destroying planets. And he sets the tone. And when you really look at it in that perspective, he is the ultimate Transformers villain. You know, you can forget about Megatron and Galvatron and Soundwave and was it Devastator? You can forget, and the Constructicons. You can forget about them, but it's just the fact that you have this menacing figure that is literally unstoppable. It really sets him apart from all the other villains that we were accustomed to in other Transformers features or other cartoons that we grew up watching. But overall, I love this film. I love the music. Being an 80s heavy metal fanatic in general, I love the music. I love how it just completely all encompasses the storyline that to this till right now, I can never get those songs out of my head because the soundtrack, and I own the soundtrack, by the way. The soundtrack is still utterly mind-blowingly amazing. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who will think about 80s heavy metal bands and think about how cheesy they are. But however, that music is still rocking. It still kicks a lot of butt. And I'm trying not to use any profanity here, but it still kicks a lot of butt, and it just really just makes you want to. It makes you believe that I hate to put it in these terms, but it makes you believe that you could be a Transformer, and you just want to help the Autobots engage in the battle against the ultimate evil. But overall, Transformers the movie, still amazing, still fun, still a part of our childhood that I hold near dear to my heart and my soul, and I love every single second of it, and I actually might end up watching it later on today just so I can reminisce about the simpler times of my childhood. But I do recommend it. I recommend it, and you know what? In retrospect, it is a great family film to watch with your kids. Even though there are a lot of heavy-handed themes in it that might traumatize kids to a certain extent. However, given the fact that now what you see on television is a lot worse, and on television and video games is a lot worse compared to what's on this one, they might make it out pretty good if I'm completely honest with you guys. But overall, highly recommended. Do watch it when you get a chance. Let me know what you thought about it. If we have gotten a chance to watch it, or if you have watched it before, please let me know on my Facebook or on my YouTube what you thought about it. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I'm not exactly sure what my next review is going to be. However, I hope you guys continue to have a great and safe time. Continue to remain healthy and be kind to one another. And I'll be here, and you'll be hearing from me again, my friends. Take care and be safe. Peace out.